Following his arrival for the tripartite conference, President Truman reviews the veteran 2nd Armored Division. Accompanied by Secretary of State Burns, Mr. Truman rides down the Avus Autobahn to Berlin, where men, tanks, and vehicles are lined up for the presidential inspection. On 18th July, the President and Mr. Burns are guests of Premier Stalin and Russian Foreign Commissar Molotov at Soviet headquarters. Premier Stalin acknowledges a request for photographs below the balcony, and the group proceeds to the garden of the villa. The formal sessions of the conference get underway with President Truman chosen to preside over the meetings. Premier Stalin exchanges handshakes with Prime Minister Churchill and British Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden. Both Churchill and Eden are to be replaced as Britain's chief spokesman at the conference. Clement R. Attlee, now shaking hands with the Russian Premier, becomes England's Prime Minister by virtue of his Labour Party's victory in the 26 July British elections. Ernest Bevin succeeds Anthony Eden as Foreign Secretary. After daily sessions for 8 days, the conference recessed until the election results became known. Between sessions, President Truman talks with Generals Dwight D. Eisenhower and Omar N. Bradley. Fleet Admiral William D. Leahy is also present at the President's Potsdam White House. A meeting of the British and American Chiefs of Staff. On 26 July, a joint declaration from President Truman and retiring Prime Minister Churchill, issued with the concurrence of the Chinese Generalissimo, calls on the Japanese government to surrender unconditionally. This order is prefaced as follows: the prodigious land, sea, and air forces of the United States, the British Empire, and of China, many times reinforced by their armies and air fleets from the West, are poised to strike the final blows upon Japan. Additional films on the invasion of Balikpapan, Borneo by troops of the Australian 7th Division. At Morotai Island, staging area for the invasion, a vast supply of materiel is loaded on the transports while troops assemble to embark on LCIs. The operation is under the joint command of Australian and American officers. Due to the shallow beaches at Morotai, the Australians are forced to wade through water above the waist to board the LCIs. Over 300 ships of the U.S. 7th Fleet and the Royal Netherlands Navy participate in the invasion of oil-rich Balikpapan. Rocket ships help reduce shore installations and defenses, taking part in the intense aerial and naval bombardment which preceded the invasion. Clouds of black smoke from burning oil tanks and refineries hang over the beach as Jap 5-inch coastal guns fire at our fleet units offshore. Amtraks and landing craft bring the Australians ashore. 7th Division troops land in force 1st July, hitting the beach at Clandasan, the European suburb of Balikpapan. After quickly establishing a beachhead, Australian infantry, supported by alligator tanks, push inland past the blazing ruins of buildings and oil installations. Enemy small arms and mortar fire is encountered by the Australians, who quickly capture strategic Parramatta Ridge overlooking the city. Infantry flamethrowers destroy Japs taking refuge in pillboxes. The few natives remaining in the district are rounded up by the Australians. Many are starved and malaria-ridden. Knocked out enemy coastal guns. Prior to the invasion landings, 17 of 28 known 90mm gun positions were destroyed by planes of the 13th Air Force. Captured Japanese anti-aircraft direction and fire control equipment, similar to that employed by the Allies. Salvaging wrecked trucks at a maintenance battalion area on Okinawa. The trucks are stripped and motors sent to the shops for a complete reconditioning. The motors are first placed on a conveyor where the subassembly is removed. They are then checked to determine the extent of the repair necessary. A steam jenny is used to give them a thorough cleaning. Various parts are then removed and carried to individual engine stands where the mechanics work on them. The valve assemblies are removed and the blocks placed on stands where the cylinders are machine honed. Worn parts are replaced and where possible, all parts are reconditioned and used again. The reconditioned motors are given a test shakedown before being put to work again. Also on Okinawa, M4 tanks are equipped with a modified M2A1 anti-personnel mine. An electric squib from an M6A3 bazooka rocket is used for an igniter, replacing the detonator and pressure-type igniter used on the original M2A1. These anti-personnel mines have been devised to protect combat vehicles against close or suicidal attack by enemy personnel. Brackets to hold the mines are welded on the tank turret. A wiring system inside the tank cupola furnishes the electrical connection between the mine brackets and the central switch which controls firing of the mines. Each bracket has an electrical contact point against which the mine is fitted when placed in the bracket. Inside the steel flange tube of the M2A1 is a rejected 60mm mortar projectile weighing 3 pounds and filled with .34-pound flake TNT. Ignition of the base charge propels the projectile a distance of approximately 6 feet before detonation occurs. Effect of the projectile is casualties within 10 yards of the blast. Lieutenant General John Hodges, Colonel R.W. Daniels, and 10th Army officers are present at field tests of the modified M2A1.
This assembly of the Japanese Navy 12-centimeter incendiary shrapnel rocket. Projectiles of this type, approximately 28.5 inches long and weighing 51 pounds, were located on Okinawa 14th June by men of the 105th Infantry Regiment. Components are being removed from the steel motor body of the rocket. This is the motor base plate and grid. The 6 openings, or offset orifices, give the rocket its spin stabilizing feature. Removing the propellant. The rocket fuel consists of 1 short and 7 long sticks of dark brown powder. Each stick has a single central longitudinal perforation. Unscrewing the motor body from the warhead. The rocket's aerial burst fuse is, in effect, a powder delay train, allowing the projectile to travel 2,000 to 3,000 yards before detonation of the main charge, which is housed in this warhead motor adapter. The warhead body is a one-piece steel cylinder with welded ogival nose and contains a metal canister filled with 62 metal-encased incendiary pellets. Running the length of the cylinder and centrally located is a small burster tube containing 5 picric acid pellets. Testing one of the sticks of propellant by igniting the smokeless powder. Demonstrating the assembly of the incendiary canister. A label contained in the rocket motor of a captured projectile refers to the incendiary powder as special compound. The pellets are easily ignited. Rockets are test-fired by the 95th Ordnance Bomb Disposal Squad using a specially constructed launcher. Since no primers were recovered with the rockets, electric blasting caps are affixed to set off the projectiles. It's believed that the Japs intended the rocket for use on suicide boats. In these tests, ordnance experts study the rocket's general flight characteristics. An Okinawa native guides an American patrol through the island's rugged interior on a rare mission. Walking closest by the old man is his son, a GI named Frank Higashi. He's assigned as an interpreter with one of the 10th Army Divisions. In 1912, the father left Okinawa and resided for a time in Los Angeles, where Frank was born. The family returned to the island while Frank was still a boy. But 8 years ago, he left alone for the States and lived in California until inducted into the Army. While Frank was landing on Okinawa as a U.S. soldier, the family was fleeing in terror. By chance, the son heard news of his father, who now leads him into the hills for a family reunion. The meeting takes place somewhere between Nago and Nagataki, where many natives found shelter from fire of battle. Frank poses with the surviving members of his family. His mother died while he was in the States, but several relatives, including an 80-year-old grandmother, are on hand to greet the American soldier. Frank meets his younger brother, wounded when our troops landed. He explains that he was then undergoing compulsory Japanese military training. A 7-year-old nephew happily shares the limelight with his American uncle. With Frank and the patrol, the Higashis leave their isolated retreat. The military government is providing new quarters for the family. Frank, reportedly, is submitting an application for a dependency allotment. Whether this will be granted under the unusual circumstances is subject to a decision from official sources.
M-26 prime movers transport the tube and base for the 914-millimeter mortar, Little David. A 12-foot pit is dug with timber flooring to facilitate emplacement of the base assembly and to distribute the firing loads. A 12-degree slope serves as an entrance ramp. The 46.5-ton base is backed into the pit. Built-in hydraulic jacks lift it so that the bogey can be removed by a crane and the prime mover driven out again. Backfilling by bulldozer, angle dozer, or other earth-moving machinery is the next step. To minimize the rearward motion when firing, it is recommended that the backfill be tamped solidly. A timber runway is constructed, enabling the 40-ton tube to be driven directly onto the base. The trunnion supports align with the trunnion jacks by use of a built-in cross-feed screw. A hydraulic pump and valve system within the base raises the jacks which lift the trunnion supports, permitting the carrier to be driven away. The jacks are then lowered, and the tube drops until the elevating rack is engaged with the elevating pinion. The sight is attached and the remote control connection made. A hydraulic pump driven by an electric motor mounted on the elevating segment is used to pump the tube into battery position. The base unit of the propelling charge is inserted using a powder charger equipped with a pair of telescoping tubes. The largest caliber mortar ever built, the Little David was conceived and designed as a special assault weapon for use by land forces where heavy destructive power is required against unusually resistant targets. Loading the pre-engraved projectile T1, which weighs 3,650 pounds. Elevation of the mortar after the shell has been aligned and entered to the deep end of the rotating band enables it to slide down to a seat at the rear of the tube. The piece is traversed by power to the correct azimuth position. The bright surface indicates the tube's recoil, 24.5 inches. This surface changes from the lower to the upper edge of the trunnion ring as the piece is pumped into battery position, shown by a light in the remote control box. Holding the piece in battery with one hand, the gunner pushes the firing button. All firing in this demonstration is with instantaneous fuse setting. Muzzle velocity, 1,250 feet per second. Maximum range, 9,500 yards. Craters average 38 feet in diameter and 13 feet deep, with an appreciably greater depth of distributed soil.